The General Services Administration will put the Defense Department's Cybersecurity Maturity Model certification requirements into 2 contracts. GSA's Keith Nakasone told you on this program last week those 2 probably won't be the last 2. Katie Arrington's Chief Information Security Officer for Acquisition at the Department of Defense. Katie, welcome back. Thanks for coming back on the program. Companies are thinking about this that have not thought about this before, that are selling into the civilian sector and that want to get on these contracts that Keith Nakasone talked about last week. What do these companies that are coming to your process for the first time need to think about?
So, Francis, thank you, for having me on and always being a partner, because we're all in this together. It's something I was urgent to come on and tell everybody that we currently have those DFAR rule 252.204.7012. That rule goes into, it came out as an interim rule. It goes into effect on December 1st. The Cmmc is part of that. It will take 5 years to implement, but prior to contract award for any DoD, that means GSA partner, needs to register in SPURS. If you go to the DFAR rule, you can find that. It's the supplier risk platform from DCMA, but companies need to do a self-assessment on where they are as of December 1st for any contract award, with the exception of micro purchases and COTS products.
What does that self-assessment consist of, Katie? What are companies going to have to do for themselves?
So they need to, they need to have their cage code number. They need to do the assessment methodology, which is there on the platform as well. It's the crawl, walk, run that we've been talking about for 2 years in government, about cybersecurity being foundational to all acquisition here in the Department of Defense. So we're actually executing that. We've been talking about this rule change, and you have to read the rule to see that the 7019-252-204-7019 is supplementing in where the 7012 clause was. And as of December 1st, you have to do the self-assessment. You need to record it with your cage code, your company name, your SSP, your security plan. Log it in so the government, when we go to contract award, can verify that you've done that. And know that we are still continuing with the Cmmc rollout. That is in now what is known as DFAR clause 252.204.7021. So it's all happening. I just want to make sure everyone realized on December 1st, for new contracts, you have to register.
Do you have enough of a body of knowledge about the companies that are working these issues already to know if there are common themes, common threads among what the companies have had to do to get themselves compliant with these requirements, Katie?
So the first big things, Francis, have always been, right? If I could get the industry to understand how critical it is to do simple things like update your passwords, really actually implement two-factor authentication, and really mark data appropriately, if we could do the basics of what we need to do here in the Department of Defense, we wouldn't be losing $600 billion a year to our adversaries as a nation. So if companies could just do the basics, the things that you should do at home, our nation would be a tremendous amount more secure. So that trust but verify is what we're doing with the Cmmc. It's been rolling out for a while, and it's going into effect December 1st.
So am I hearing you correctly, though, Katie, that if I'm a company that sells to one civilian agency primarily, and I didn't think this would ever touch me, now I'm hearing that it's touching me. It sounds like you're saying, if I'm just doing the basic blocking and tackling, the basic cyber hygiene stuff that I should have been doing all along, I'm probably going to be fine, at least to get started, and then I can work my way through the rest of this process. Am I hearing you right?
Yes, and we're doing the crawl, walk, run. Other federal agencies will be following in line with the Cmmc, but know that they all have different requirements. So they're working through that. The National Cyber Solarium Report, I've talked about it on your show before. In Section 4 of that is all about a national cybersecurity program. The Department of Energy has what is known as C2M2, which is voluntary, but we're all moving to this trust but verify methodology. But those partners in DoD anywhere in the supply chain as of December 1st, prior to contract award, you must register in the SPRS.
I think the concern that some of these companies have, I teased a GSA official this week, not Keith Nakasone, that DOD is essentially exercising its market power. When Keith was on the program, he said the reason we're doing this is because DOD is our biggest customer, and we want to provide contract vehicles that our biggest customer will want to use. And I think that's the concern that companies have, is this is a DOD thing, and now all of a sudden it's falling on me. Is that something the company should be concerned about, Katie?
No, I would say that a rising tide raises all boats. And cybersecurity isn't something that isn't going to touch you. It is already. Companies that are working within the federal agencies know that you have something known as a security risk score today out there, commercially available. That's what banks are using. The insurance companies are moving out on cybersecurity insurance. Those commercially available ratings are much like your a personal, like TransUnion Equifax credit report. Your company has one. Any public-facing IP has a security rating score available. And that is what industry is looking at. We in the Department of Defense are not alone in this within the federal sphere. How a company positions themselves as their maturity about cybersecurity is absolutely essential to their survivability, their enduring capability to not just our industry, but to all industries.
This December 1st deadline is important, Katie, but I want to talk about what's over the horizon for people participating in this program. When we come back, more of my conversation with Katie Arrington when Government Matters continues in just a moment. Welcome back. As you just learned, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification interim rule goes into effect at the start of next month. The Defense Department's taking comments from the public. In the meantime, more now with Katie Arrington, Chief Information Security Officer for Acquisition at DOD. What's the rest of the timeline look like? You and I have spoken in the past, Katie, about accreditation and all of the other issues that the board is working on. What happens after December 1st to continue to codify the CMMC program?
So we're rolling out the contracts, the pilot programs. There'll be 15 in FY21. That has about 150 suppliers on each. But this effort, it's not going away. I don't, what happens on January 21st is inconsequential to this. This is something that is a DFAR rule. It is becoming an acquisition regulation. This has had bipartisan support. The CMMC was part of the NDAA for the past 3 years. Know that our government, regardless, takes the value and the security of our industrial base very seriously. And it's a bipartisan issue. This is not going to change. It is not going to slow down. We have 5 years to fully implement it, and 5 years is too long of a time, if you ask me. We need to do this now.
What's the collaboration been like between you and the General Services Administration? Lisa Hirschman and Emily Murphy were on the program a couple of weeks ago talking about the high-level collaboration. What'd that look like at your level when they said, I imagine the process was they came to you and said, you're our best customer, we want to implement this stuff, how do we go about doing that? What did that process look like, Katie?
So I'll tell you that Keith Nakasone is, you look at an luminary. I had a conversation with him about 1.5 years ago, and we both agreed. We were sitting there, it was like meeting, your twin about this is really, really important. We, of course, the department, we speak to GSA quite frequently, but it was that gentleman who took the lion's share and said, you know what, I'm in acquisition and we're moving forward. And Keith has been an amazing partner. GSA is an amazing partner on everything that we do here in the Department of Defense. From our position on the Federal Acquisition Security Council, I'm the member for the DOD on that. Our greatest partners are GSA, have been. General Services, they help us so much every day, and I can't say enough about them. And Keith is an luminary. He's definitely someone to watch.
GSA is not the only organization that the Defense Department does business with acquisition-wise. Should we expect to see these requirements not just in internal acquisition vehicles, not just GSA, but other places that DOD buys things?
You'll see them in DLA very, very quickly. We have many pilots with DLA, Transcom, we're working through, but everyone is waiting for us to go through this initial pilot period to make sure that we have all of the tweaks worked out on the actual CMMC certification, the process, making sure that we have level set adjudication baselines so that as an assessor goes in on the West Coast and a different assessor on the East Coast, that there's an adjudication baseline. Once that, Chris Krebs, Bob Kowalski, Brian Ware at DHS, CISA have all said that the CMMC is a good thing. There's a little bit of a difference, right? Some agencies just recommend best practices and their acquisition arm isn't as big as the Department of Defense. We happen to be the largest buyer in the nation at $350 billion under my boss, the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, Ms. Ellen Lord. We are making sure that the $350 billion that we're spending in your environment is as secure as possible, because ultimately, these are tax dollars being used. We need to ensure that we're doing the absolute best to maintain our IP, our national security, but more importantly, to keep our industrial base around. You are our national defense. And you guys do more than just Department of Defense. You're working in Commerce, you're working in Treasury. So as we move out, it's coming.
We just have a couple of minutes left, Katie. We're 10 years into the FedRAMP experience, and I know this is a different deal. This is a different thing. But one of the original goals of FedRAMP was to create a platform that agencies could reuse. We're 10 years in, we're just finally getting to the reuse process in FedRAMP. Do you expect that civilian agencies, through the methodologies that we've discussed today, getting this into government-wide acquisition vehicles and so on, that there may be a shorter process to get agencies to decide, instead of building our own, we're going to use this because it's good enough for us?
So we absolutely, the whole purpose of CMMC was never to duplicate what the government has already done. FedRAMP reciprocity is something that we led in very early with the CMMC. We've learned a great deal, and it's on us within government to learn from past experiences, to incorporate them anew so that we can continue moving forward. We learned a tremendous amount about adjudication baselines with FedRAMP. We learned about understanding what a real POAM was and how do you, in an audit environment, close those. So we are the CMMC model. We'll be using reciprocity on the FedRAMP, especially with CSP, cloud service providers, for our small businesses who may not have the organic human resources or capability to grow that maturity of cybersecurity, that they'll be able to use a FedRAMP certified, cloud certified provider to implement the CMMC. But remember, this is all a collaboration. We don't want to duplicate anything that the government has done. We want to ensure best practices and that we're making the highest and best use of our tax dollars to get the return on investment that we need for our national defense.
Katie Arrington, thanks very much for joining me. It's great to have you back.
Thank you, Francis. Take care. My parting words to everyone, please stay positive, test negative, and be kind.